Hi everyone, it's John. Welcome back to my channel. It's January 17th, 2023, and I wanted to share a book with you that I read in 2022 that I never got a chance to talk about. I think I showed it once, but never reviewed it. And it is this, The Spectre of Race, How Discrimination Haunts Western Democracy by Michael G. Hanchard. And it comes out of Princeton, one of my favorite publishers because they offer once or twice yearly wonderful sales at their press. Every once in a while they will have a flash sale that maybe 2 or 3 times a month, I guess, where they will give you an option of 10, they'll present 10 of their publications and do a drastic reduction in price, like 70% off. And these books will end up being somewhere between $8 and $10 instead of their usual $30 or $35. And sometimes when I see something that really fascinates me, I just strike and buy it. I told you a couple of times about those flash sales. This is a product of one of those, so that's how I picked this book up, and I just wanted to talk about it for a few minutes. The writer, as I said, is Michael Hanchard. He is right here. I'll show you his picture. There you go. He is a professor in the Department of Africana Studies at the University of Pennsylvania. And this book was originally published in 2018, and its argument walks a close line to a lot of topics that I've been interested in for years. Politics, discrimination, power structures, and how they are perpetuated within the confines of democratic norms and practices. I bought the book with the intention of adding it to my reading list, material reading list for African American History Month last year. Didn't quite get around to reading it in February, but I did get around to reading it. And thought about possibly inviting Professor Hanchard onto my channel to talk about the book, but then I started reading the book and thought I might be a bit too critical of it, so I never asked him, but I nevertheless wanted to say a few words about it. I realized that being a Princeton University publication, I being a thoroughly amateur person and just a neophyte in pretty much every respect, certainly when it comes to history, and maybe not the target audience for this text. Nevertheless, the text does seem to be superficially targeted at an intelligent audience, if not a scholarly one, an academic one. Unfortunately, the first third of the book is a real disappointment. It consists of this protracted analysis of the ways in which the field of comparative politics has changed since its birth in the late 19th century. And to make things even more awkward, the author does little in the second 2/3 of the book to tie any of the first 80 or so pages of the book, any of that progress, the 150 years of progress he's talking about, into the overarching argument that he gets to later. So it just kind of sits there completely disconnected from the rest of the text. That first part of the book is a really scholarly, stodgy discussion about the theoretical concerns about comparative politics. And it's an otherwise very pragmatic, rubber meets the road discussion. The rest of the book is about how hierarchies, how problems of ethno-nationalism and slavery can persist in the presence of democracies where we like to think of people as fundamentally equal. And that's really what the book is about. Again, let me share the title of it. The subtitle especially, How Discrimination Haunts Western Democracy. The book is about how how divisions, hierarchies, discriminations linger in systems, especially democracies, that perceive themselves to be above and above those hierarchies and to have sort of relegated them to the past, when in actuality these hierarchies and discriminations and all of this have really just made themselves less visible, but have not disappeared. Hanchard goes on and he talks about the cases of ethno-national inequality in American slavery, the Caribbean world, and Western Europe, talking about the precise ways in which state power has divided populations along the important lines of citizenship, education, and race. At every turn, Hanchard argues, quote, just to sort of recast the argument in Hanchard's own vocabulary, quote, legal, juridical, and institutional empowerment of citizens has been dynamically related to limiting second-class citizens or prohibiting non-citizens from access to citizenship, end quote. One of the cases that he takes up to show how inequalities and hierarchies persist in democracies is the changing nature of citizenship in ancient Athens. During the Persian Wars, Athens decided that being a native-born Athenian was necessary for citizenship. This was a law that the ancient Athenians called autochthony, and is the root word for the English word autochthonous, meaning indigenous or native to. Foreign residents, women, and even many males in ancient Athens were denied citizenship because of autochthony. This idea of using politically manipulative tools to engineer people out of citizenship would become an increasingly popular phenomenon in Western democracies. Not only one's ability to be a citizen, but their abilities to own property, to vote, to gain an education, were attacked by acts of prohibition, coercion, and even de jure statutory law. The choice of ancient Athens, and here's my problem, in a book that otherwise discusses modern developed democracies, he's talking about and giving examples from ancient Athens, which kind of seems anachronistic. We think of Athens as the birthplace of modern democracy, and in a lot of respects, it's true, but we don't really think of it as the birthplace of modern liberal Republican advanced democracy, which is what all of the other countries he discusses are. So it seems like an odd, anachronistic choice to talk about that and to spend the amount of time he does on it. Nevertheless, his points about the ability of state power to draw arbitrary lines of inclusion and exclusion for the purposes of creating disparate classes amongst a population are admittedly very well taken and appreciated. There are a few interesting lessons that Hanchard's book reinforces. And one of them is that it makes explicit that ideas of citizenship, enfranchisement, education, and other aspects of being a member of a democracy are sometimes little more than arbitrary, with the express purpose of the state being to draw political lines of inclusion and exclusion as it deems necessary to meet its own political ends. As Hanchard writes, quote, "Our contemporary moment is that population homogeneity, like the category of foreigner and citizen, is a political artifact." End quote. Other compelling questions his work poses are, for example, quote, "Is it mere coincidence that the most enduring democracies are the polities that have benefited the most from the transatlantic slave trade? And did slavery, specifically racial slavery, provide the necessary material largesse to make democracy possible?" Those are both fascinating and humbling questions that anyone interested in American history and the transatlantic slave trade need to come to terms with. Unfortunately, just a word about the style of the book, its delivery. His style is kind of unengaging. It's quite dry. It's dry as hay. It's it's very academic. And I have loved reading academic books in the past, but he's just not the most engaging prose stylist, to be quite blunt about it. Um, Again, that paired with the unnecessary first third of the book, which doesn't seem to hitch on to any of the other parts of the book, make for kind of a clunky, uneven reading experience with, on the whole, maybe as many disappointments as rewards. I would like to think that there are better books out there on the subject, even if I can't readily name any, because I'm not terribly familiar with this sort of subgenre of comparative politics. But a fascinating topic, but the delivery sometimes has things to be wanted. My thoughts, my 2 cents on the specter of race, How Discrimination Haunts Western Democracy by Michael G. Hanchard. I will see everyone soon. Bye.